Okay, big question. Do women like high T men? And that seems like an obvious one, but then in the looks maxing community, a lot of guys will go on about pretty boys and stuff like that. And certainly there's a big argument for that in that, you know, for that case. Dudes with longer hair, clean shaven, stuff like that. And there's a lot of guys here who are single and would like that to not be the case. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of guys here who have issues with girlfriends and have had nasty breakups and stuff like that. Disloyalty on the female part. So I think it's an important question with an important and nuanced answer, because it does depend. Firstly, we've got to define what high T actually is, because before asking what do women prefer this or not, you've got to ask, do women prefer more confident guys or less confident guys? Do women prefer dominant guys or submissive guys? I think everyone instinctively knows the answer to that one. Do women prefer guys with strong emotional control, which is not the same as being a robot? It's just choosing to control yourself during difficult times. Or do they prefer guys with no emotional control, who are flying off the handle at the slightest little thing going wrong, which they view as pathetic, trust me? Do they prefer guys with a high-pitched voice or a deep voice? Do they prefer guys with wispy, pube-looking facial hair or very, very thick facial hair? When I say facial hair, I mean like a thick stubble or a short beard, not one of these stupid, long, curly, neck beard, pube-looking things that, I don't know, like a lot of gamers seem to think looks good, or maybe they just don't care, they've given up on life. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking like a dense stubble or short beard. Obviously they prefer the good facial hair. So when you put it like that, the answer's kind of obvious, isn't it? Like, of course they do. And it gets even more obvious in relationships. Because when you first meet someone, things like height, how handsome the guy is, all make a huge difference. It depends on how the woman sees herself as well. Because some of them are arrogant, they think they're nines. Some of them are fives and they sort of know it. Like, it depends on the girl. But also when you first meet someone, if you're in a club or you're on Tinder, well, that changes things, doesn't it? Emotional control doesn't even come into it, really. Or it's unlikely to. What else? Even confidence might not come into it until later on. So, in a relationship, they definitely prefer high T guys. When you first meet them, same thing, they do prefer high T guys, but it depends on the context and it depends on the age of the woman. If she's like 16, she's going to go for more pretty boys from a physical appearance standpoint. Clean shaven, longer hair, longish, not necessarily long, but you know what I mean. But behaviourally, it's always the stronger behaviours rather than the weak behaviours, which is confidence, dominance, emotional control. There's probably a bunch of other ones. Competence, as opposed to being incompetent. Like, which one do you think they prefer? Charisma versus a lack of social skills, although you don't necessarily need social skills if you're that good looking, and that you definitely don't then. But a lot of guys seem to think it's like stoicism. She's just sitting there being a robot. And again, women will see straight through that, because it's a form of defensiveness, which is still weakness. Because if you have emotions or you have preferences or you have thoughts and you're just hiding them from everyone all the time because you're scared, which is what's really going on, they will sniff that shit out very, very quickly. They're not stupid. Everyone has fears, for example, but there's a huge difference between, I'm talking from experience here, I can tell you for a fact, There's a huge difference between a guy who, when a girl asks him, you know, what is your biggest fear, which yes is a SH1T test. There's a big difference between the guy that sits there and goes, I don't have any fears, or the guy that starts whining and just emoting for hours on end and doesn't stop talking, and he's got this really needy look in his eye the whole time, and he's like leaning in, like hoping she'll make him feel better. There's a huge difference between those two, and then the guy that kind of just logically explains what his fears are, and then that's it. It's like 5 words or 10 words. Or, you know, he says what they are and he'll talk about them a little bit if she really wants him to. But it's more just neutral tone of voice, and through his tone she can tell that he doesn't need her help with them. That's the key. So being a robot isn't the answer. It's being defensive definitely isn't the answer. But the key is to have the fear, but have it handled. So that's emotional control, which is what you really need, not stoicism, which is, I think, what a lot of guys seem to think it is, and it's not. But once they're over the age of like 22, 23, yeah, it's almost always the higher T guy as opposed to the lower T guy. They get bored of the pretty boys pretty quickly. But again, it does depend. It depends. Short term, when you first meet someone, versus if you've been with someone for years. Do women prefer the less competent, more emotionally erratic, less dominant, more submissive guy? No, none of them prefer that. Like, some women have different preferences, but those are not preferences. All women prefer certain things. Like, they say looks are subjective as well. You've got to ask yourself, is there a woman on the planet that would rather be with Kevin from The Office than Jason Momoa or Brad Pitt or whoever? The answer is no. There's not a single woman on the planet who is mentally sane and is not in a psychiatric ward who would make that decision. It isn't that subjective. They all like the same things, really. Anyway, let me know if you found this rant useful. If no one comments, then I will assume no one cares. But I have had a few questions on Instagram, so I will assume for now that people care. And if you want to improve your looks side of things, check out this video on the truth on how to get a beach body. Hint, it is not about ab training. You don't need to train your abs. It's a nice little extra, but it's mostly about fat loss and a few other things. So check out that video. I'll see you in there.